Dinosaurs were just discovered in 1842. They've been so popular for so long that we barely even notice them anymore. But no matter how many Jurassic Park movies they make, it's hard to top the original. Real-life dinosaurs are way cooler than fiction. Because not only do we know that they existed, but we know exactly what they look like down to the scales on their skin. That's because over tens of millions of years, some parts of dinosaurs turned into stone. And when paleontologists carefully chip away that rock, they can get an exact replica of the dinosaur's skin. In this video, we're going to see what fossils have revealed about dinosaurs, specifically their evolution into one very famous group of dinosaurs that has survived to this day. First, let's take a look at one of the most famous fossils ever found, Archaeopteryx. This fossil was such a big deal back when it was first discovered in 1861 that it made headlines around the world. It was so significant because it showed a clear link between dinosaurs and birds. The word Archaeopteryx means ancient wing. When it was first found, scientists had never even heard of evolution. But after they learned more about Archaeopteryx, evolution became the only possible explanation for its existence. Archaeopteryx looks like a mix between a crow and a reptile with feathers and claws. The idea that birds evolved from dinosaurs was controversial. At the time, most people thought that birds were related to dinosaurs the same way that people are related to starfish, very distantly. But Archaeopteryx shows that birds are actually theropod dinosaurs, the same group that includes T-Rex and Velociraptor. If you didn't know that birds were dinosaurs, now you do. After all, if Archaeopteryx was a bird, then so are you. Archaeopteryx lived 150 million years ago, so it's easy to assume that evolution happened really fast. But that's not the case. If you study the geology of the area where it was found, you can find much older fossils of animals that show smaller evolutionary steps towards becoming Archaeopteryx. Evolution doesn't happen overnight. In fact, evolution isn't even an overnight process. It happens over millions of years. Archaeopteryx wasn't the first animal to evolve feathers. A relative of Ankylosaurus, in the genus Boreopelta, Mark Mitchell, had feathers that covered its entire body. It might have used these feathers for display, or maybe it used them to stay warm. This animal lived 120 million years before Archaeopteryx, which means that feathers might have been useful long before our favorite feathered friend showed up. But feathers weren't the only important adaptation that helped our ancestors fly. Hollow bones also played a huge role. If you compare the thigh bone of a bird with the thigh bone of a Nanavian dinosaur, you can see that they're weirdly similar. The hollow spaces inside of bird bones help them stay light, which makes sense for animals that need to be able to fly. But that doesn't explain why non-avian dinosaurs also have these holes. It's unlikely that non-avian dinosaurs could fly, but they did have relatives that could. One interesting piece of evidence for this comes from a fossil of a Microraptor that was found with feathers attached to its bones. This fossil was found in China, and it's incredibly complete, which is rare for a fossil with feathers. Microraptor was a small feathered dinosaur that probably glided between trees. Unlike Archaeopteryx, it had 4 wings. 2 were on its arms, and 2 were on its legs. These wings allowed it to control which direction it fell when it jumped, which is similar to how a squirrel falls from a tree. It uses its limbs to steer itself through the air. We don't know if Microraptor could truly fly, but it probably would have been pretty easy for them to get off the ground. If they spread all 4 wings, they could have easily taken off like a flying squirrel. The reason that non-avian dinosaurs have hollow bones is the same reason that mammals have hollow bones. It's a trait that helps animals stay light and maneuverable. Hollow bones aren't exclusive to birds or dinosaurs. They're common in lots of other groups too, like mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. So it's hard to say whether this feature alone helped dinosaurs evolve into birds. Another thing that doesn't help us is the wishbone. The wishbone, also called the furcula, is a bone that's formed by 2 fused clavicles. People have asked if the wishbone is evidence that birds are descended from dinosaurs, but that's wrong. Wishbones aren't unique to birds. Some fish and reptiles have them too. The wishbone might help a bird keep its wings stiff, so that it can generate lift, but that's not the reason that it evolved. Stiffening the ribs is a side effect of the wishbone. It's like if your shirt collar made your shoulders stronger. That's a side effect. The real reason that wishbones evolved is so that animals could breathe while they were chewing. So far, we haven't talked about the part of the skeleton that clearly shows the evolution of flight wings. Wings evolved independently several times in different groups of animals, so it's not easy to say exactly how they evolved in dinosaurs. But there are some clues that come from studying living birds. All birds have feathers, but not all birds have the same kind of feathers. That's because feathers evolved for different reasons, and they took on different forms. Some feathers are used for display, some are used for camouflage, and some are used for flight. Flight feathers are stiff and narrow, which makes them perfect for catching wind and steering through the air. But not all birds use their feathers to fly. Penguins, ostriches, and emus can't fly, yet they still have flight feathers. This is proof that flight feathers don't always evolve for the purpose of flying. Instead, they evolved as a way for dinosaurs to attract a mate. One theory says that feathers evolved from scales, but that's just a guess. But the reason that feathers evolved doesn't matter. What does matter is how they eventually led to flight. We know that Archaeopteryx had feathers, but its feathers were probably used for mating rituals, not for flying. Feathers would have been useful for attracting a mate or scaring away rivals, especially if you were a colorful, iridescent blue like Archaeopteryx. That's because bright colors are often used to attract a mate. Think about peacocks today, where feathers are mainly used for mating rituals, so feathers might have originally been used for the same thing by Archaeopteryx. Feathers are made of keratin, which is the same thing that fingernails are made of. So in a way, you have feathers too. Even though they're small, the evolution of feathers probably happened in small ways. Over millions of years, a feather might have started out as a scale, but then become bigger and softer until it looked like a fluffy little tuft. This kind of change could have happened in a bunch of different ways, and it could have happened multiple times. It's really hard to figure out exactly how feathers evolved, but we can get a clue from studying alligators. Even though alligators aren't closely related to dinosaurs, they can still teach us something about the evolution of feathers. Alligators have scales that are raised off of their bodies, kind of like little fluffy feathers. These scales look like baby feathers, and they probably the closest thing that we have to the earliest feathers. The quest to understand the origin of feathers has led scientists to some surprising discoveries. For example, they learned that feathers and hair grow in the same way. Mammals and birds both have a structure called the epidermal appendage. It's the part of the body that makes hair or feathers. This structure grows by dividing cells at the base of each feather follicle or hair follicle. Mammals and birds probably got this structure from a common ancestor that had feathers. Feathers might have originally evolved as a way for dinosaurs to stay warm. That's because warm-blooded animals need a way to keep their bodies insulated. If dinosaurs couldn't regulate their body temperature, they might have struggled to survive in colder climates. But feathers wouldn't have been the only adaptation that would have helped them survive. Larger brains also helped early dinosaurs adapt to new environments. Scientists think that the evolution of feathers happened in 3 steps. First, the epidermal appendage grew longer. Then new structures grew next to the appendage. Finally, these structures grew into true feathers. But no matter how they evolved, feathers helped dinosaurs succeed in a wide variety of habitats. And even though some dinosaurs went extinct, birds are still thriving today. But feathers weren't the only adaptation that helped our ancestors fly. Wings also played a huge role. Wings evolved independently several times in different groups of animals. So it's not easy to say exactly how they evolved in dinosaurs. But there are some clues that come from studying living birds. All birds have feathers, but not all birds have the same kind of feathers. That's because feathers evolved for different reasons, and they took on different forms. Some feathers are used for display, some are used for camouflage, and some are used for flight. Flight feathers are stiff and narrow, which makes them perfect for catching wind and steering through the air. But not all birds use their feathers to fly. Penguins, ostriches, and emus can't fly, yet they still have flight feathers. This is proof that flight feathers don't always evolve for the purpose of flying. Instead, they evolved as a way for dinosaurs to attract a mate. So what do you think? Do you know any obscure facts about dinosaurs that you'd like to share? Leave a comment down below. And thank you for watching.